On today's show, divine music, soundtracks, hymns, and sonic spirituality. Examine how game soundtracks and audio design contribute to emotional and spiritual experiences while playing. All coming at you next. What's up, everybody? I'm Russ Dornisch, and this is Crossfire, faith and gaming podcast. And joining me, as always, are my co-hosts, the Reverend David Petty and Brian.
Here we are.
Hello, everybody. Yes. How are you guys doing today? Brian, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing well.
Yeah? Dave,
Yeah.
Doing well. I wasn't here last week for last week's episode. I apologize, everybody.
I'm doing well.
Missed all your wonderful faces and voices and all that wonderful stuff. Okay, so we're going to dive in today. We are going to be talking about divine music. So what this is going to kind of look like is we want to kind of dive in and kind of relate and look at each other's preferences, kind of dive into some of our favorites and ideas, but really taking a look at the cross intersection between gaming soundtracks and music, and the music that we listen to, worship music that we listen to at church, and kind of how that affects and connects to each other. So Dave, when we look at that intersection, what are some things that comes to mind for you straight off the bat, just hearing that? If I were to ask you, like, what are ways that your kind of music love intersects between video games and church and worship?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, I want to start off with just setting a basis for my worship music experience, which is, to me, worship music is probably the best vehicle that we have for conveying challenging theological concepts, right? And I think because of this, from a worship music standpoint, we have to be careful with what theological implications we're conveying in our music. That being said, I think a more modern take on worship music is more atmospheric, more meditative, more getting you in a mindset, not necessarily conveying a bunch of lyrics that are theologically sound. And I think the same thing is true with games, right? Like, we look to music in games to help us get in the right mood for the game that we're playing. And if you were playing God of War and hearing the soundtrack to Mario, it would be kind of a weird experience. Right? Like, yeah.
Yes, that's a good example. I really want to see that. Please, somebody out there, mash those two up and give us kind of the atmospheric video for that if you want.
Yeah, so I think that's my take on it. But
Brian, what are your thoughts when I bring that up? Like, just off the cuff, what does that like put into your mind or your mindset and your feelings on the idea of those two things kind of intersecting and what that looks like?
Yeah, I think David makes a really interesting point, right? That music can kind of set the tone for the thing that you're doing. And certainly that happens within games, right? Like, having the right kind of background music can really set the tone for that activity. And we've even talked in the past about games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and the SSX series, where you get in kind of an almost meditative state in those games, where, the background music kind of plugs into that experience. And then later on, when you hear that same music, it sort of brings back a flood of all those memories. And I think the same thing can happen too with some of our worship music. And we can kind of reflect on, if we hear that even in a different setting, sometimes we can reflect on that great worship experience that we've had in the past.
Yeah, I immediately went to that when you started talking about that kind of nostalgic attitude, because again, it's the same thing. If I put on Spotify and I get like Superman pops up on my playlist, I immediately get transported back to playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and all the fun I had and just playing it and jamming out to that. And on the same side of that, I also get that same feeling when certain worship music or worship songs come on, or I hear something on the radio, or I hear something at church, or whatever it may be. I get kind of transported back to my childhood or different memories that I have in church or at youth events or, at college or wherever it may be, where now all of a sudden I have that connection. I get brought back to that. I think that's the great part about music is I think it really allows kind of for that receptors. It's the whole five senses thing. If you smell something, you get brought back here. If you see something, you get brought back here. And I think obviously if we hear something, we can be transported back. On my end, when I think about the cross section and intersection of these two, for me, it's something very similar too. I look at my tastes and what I like. I kind of grew up evangelical and grew up in kind of the more traditional, not traditional, I should say. The evangelical traditional is really what it is, because now I'm more traditional, but kind of the more modern, upbeat, rock band type worship music. And I enjoyed that for what it was. I think being a younger person, it was interesting for me and it kept my attention. But I think I as bad as it sounds, I mean, and a lot of people will say this, I'm like the old man, get off my lawn now type thing of being that old person that's like, I can't deal with that anymore. I can't deal with like the rock show. I can't deal with like the loud music and all the different stuff going on and all that thing. Like that kind of thing has just kind of left behind me. And now, the church that I'm at now, very traditional. We have a very amazing piano player. So like a lot of our meditative music that we'll do during worship service won't even have words. We'll just kind of sit and think quietly as we listen to some beautiful piano piece. I absolutely love that ability to kind of set my mind straight in that atmospheric moment. And talking offline with you guys, like I think about one of my favorite games and a game that David and I both hundreds of hours in between the two of us, which is Death Stranding. And the first moment that the game really opens up into the open world atmosphere, Kojima did just something so amazing, which was he just had the camera go out into a cinematic view of your character walking across this beautiful vista with amazing graphics, and this soundtrack just comes in and hits. And it's nothing like hard. It's very smooth. It's very calm, almost classical in a way, very new age. And it made me immediately, like I had goosebumps. It's I will never forget that moment probably ever in my life as far as experienced games go. And it's kind of the same feeling that I like to get and what I like to see when I am a part of worship to really get me dialed in and kind of figuring that out. Is there any moments or things that you guys can remember that kind of gave you those feelings of some kind of epic? I mean, almost it really transports you and puts you in the game almost is really what I think kind of the feeling I'm talking about. David, have you ever experienced anything like that you can remember with games or then on the opposite side, church?
That's a good one. Yeah, for games, I mean, I think we've talked a number of times, The Last of Us soundtrack, right? I think just hearing that soundtrack, that kind of... and part of it is that the soundtrack resonates with what the director of the game was trying to do, right? So a lot of the game is about this juxtaposition of this beautiful world that also is hauntingly beautiful because it has horrors in it. The music is also kind of this hauntingly beautiful guitar that's echoey and melancholic and sad but pretty at the same time, and so those kind of things. And then you add on top of that, and for listeners out there who might not know, because I guess I probably have never talked about this, I actually studied music in my undergrad for 2 years before switching to film, and I took a whole series of classes on film music, right? So we talk about in film music that you have different characters have different themes, that you have this light motif and whatever the dark motif is called, right? But the same kind of, you have Luke and Leia's theme in Star Wars, you've got Darth Vader's theme, you've got Han Solo's theme. And so when you hear these things, there's kind of echoes of those characters or echoes of that feeling. And I think the same thing happens all the time in games. And I'm trying to pick out, like, I don't know if specific moments, but gosh, there's a ton of moments in The Last of Us that if not for the impact the music has, that emotional impact for that music right there, it's just like, it just hits your soul. And you just want to openly weep. I mean, the same thing is true, right? The recent Barbie movie, okay? If you've not heard the Billie Eilish song, oh gosh, I can't remember what it is, but whatever the song is that plays at the very end of the Barbie movie, and she's kind of remembering, I don't know, there's like this whole montage that you just can't help but to like tear up thinking about humanity and the beauty of a mother-child relationship. And it's like a movie about a plastic doll, but somehow they've used music to bring these memories in. And so, yeah, so there's all sorts of games and media that have that. And I think that, the interesting thing, you were talking about sense or sounds and part of the senses. And I was thinking, this is one of the places that we kind of don't think about it in worship so much, unless you're in like a Greek Orthodox church. But scent is also one of those senses that can really be powerful, and probably the most powerful of the senses. We just haven't had a really good way to replicate that in games. Even like in terms of movies, you've got Ratatouille, where at the end the food critic remembers the smell, and you just have to kind of imagine that what that smell smells like. Until now, with the pizza controller, with the TMNT pizza controller, I guess somewhere out there's probably some child playing this game while smelling the pizza controller, and 20 years from now is going to pull out this old rancid bottle of pizza oil and go, smells like my childhood. I don't know, but it's interesting that we haven't really tapped into that sense, where I think for some people too, those senses can be really powerful as well. The smell of your grandmother's house, or the smell of somebody's house that you love, or the smell of dirt at a baseball field, or, those are the kinds of things that really bring memories to life, as well as sounds and sights and tastes and all that. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, so Russ was talking about these kind of awe-inspiring moments where the music and whatever is happening, the visuals and so on in the game kind of, inspire that awe within us. And I know that the first time I can think of that this happened to me was actually in Ninja Gaiden. There's a scene, it's after like the second or third stage, where like there's a reveal of the castle, and it was like an amazing moment. I think it would, not hit the same now because, times have moved on, but I know at that time it was something awe-inspiring and impressive for me. I was also thinking about just like, setting the mood and so on, and music being like a background element that kind of is almost providing a hidden, like a hidden feature that you're almost not picking up on. And I was recently just like listening to a podcast about Alan Wake, and I listened to the soundtrack for it because there was a musical piece that they led off that podcast with, and I was like, wait, this is from Alan Wake? And I was surprised at like how good the music was for that soundtrack, and I was like, man, this really goes with the sort of, again, awe-inspiring vistas that you get in the Pacific Northwest. And I could see some of the reasons why, like, some of the things in this game really worked for me, because all of those things were working together. Even if, like, I wasn't noticing the music as, like, a foreground element, it was sitting there in the background just, like, reinforcing things that were happening.
Yeah, so that reminds me. I think three moments I want to talk about that I forgot about, because I had to kind of look them up. And Brian, when you were talking, I kind of helped to get my juices flowing. The first of which is the background music for SimCity 4. You start that up and there's this kind of atmospheric, and then when your city gets bustling, it's and there's kind of this rush going on that reinforces the fact that you're busy putting roads and you're busy, zoning areas, and you're trying to figure out why the police station's on fire. And then once things kind of settle down, the music gets calm too. And the same kind of thing I think happens a lot in Red Dead. Red Dead Redemption 2 is great about this, that the background music, and which is just beautiful, and it's so seamless that you almost forget that you're that you're listening to any sort of background music because it does it so well. But there again, that it swells at the right times, that it gets fast at the right times. And then I was going to say the other game that I was thinking about is and a foreground music in a totally different way is the Still Alive song in Portal, which is just that game is not what it is without that song. So, every time that I'm like, man, this was great, this was a triumph, and I'm like, do 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 do. This was a triumph. Anyway, making a note here, huge success.
So, I want to get you guys a question that, again, take a second if you need to for this, because I just thought of it, and I'm sure it's not going to be easy. If there was a worship song or a game soundtrack that you'd want to play, because going back to Dave's whole theme, Luke's theme and Leia's theme and Darth Vader's theme, if we were in a Crossfire movie and there had to be a soundtrack or song or theme to kind of go with you, or even if it's just a simple song that you play on piano, like, what do you guys think that would be? Or is that too difficult to come up with something off the cuff? Because we did not think about this off air. I'm trying to think of something and how that could be, like, or a song. Well, that would be funny.
Can give you it again. Probably doesn't answer your question, but the only game soundtrack that I ever bought standalone, bought the CD for, and then listened to all the time, was the original soundtrack to StarCraft, and especially the title music to StarCraft. Anyway, so good background music. But I don't know if that would be my theme.
Brian, do you have an idea?
Yeah, I think you'd want it to be like some kind of, something that goes through various moods and has, uplifting moments and then has quieter moments. I'm sure there are many soundtracks that I can't think of right at the moment. I think like a Blizzard soundtrack probably feels like a good idea there, David. Like there's just like a lot of choices there. Warcraft 2, you could like maybe grab a Diablo soundtrack, like, because there are some like amazing musical pieces in those that I think would fit a variety of like, oh, this thing is happening in my life. I think that's the direction you were kind of going, right, Russ? Of like,
a bit,
if this was like the soundtrack to my life, would I want it to be this thing? And yeah, you'd want it to be something that has, kind of has different, lets you go on that roller coaster.
What about? I mean, another way we could look at this is, what about if you had to have a montage? Okay, you had to have a montage. You had to get better at something. Brian, your family was kidnapped, and you got to go Taken style to get them. So you're gonna have to go like to the Liam Neeson school of kicking butt and taking names. Okay, so here's Liam Neeson training Brian. What song is playing in the montage song?
I will hunt you down.
I have a special set of skills.
I had to go there. Literally, that's the best thing I could do. You guys think of anything? Is there something that you'd like? I'd love that to be a montage song besides like the general montage songs.
The only thing that comes to mind because it's so ridiculous is Wii Sports.
What? That's your montage? Okay, David's family is going to be never seen again.
Training elements, right? Of I trained very hard at Wii Sports. I'll have you know.
What about the training music from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out? That's not bad.
Oh, there you go. We get some games in there too. Okay. I was thinking, I'm looking at like the best songs for montages. I definitely want, because it's probably the song I listen to the most and blare in my car, and that would be "Lose Yourself" by Eminem. I thought
we were going with video game songs.
You don't have to go with video games. You can just go in general music. Like It doesn't have to be a video game soundtrack. Like, if there's a song out there that you're like, yes, please. I mean, obviously, we could use the entire Tony Hawk soundtrack or any
for
of
me,
that stuff for the.
As a San Diego Padres fan of many years ago, it would be Trevor Hoffman's theme when he would come out to be a closer for the San Diego Padres of AC/DC Hell's Bells. Just because the build up to that, you get the down, 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 and then you get the bong, bong. Anyway,
careful, David.
Slow almost builds. Yeah, I'm not gonna sing the whole thing.
I was about to say, you're sounding exactly like it. We're gonna get copyright claimed because we have the exact lyrics and sound of Hell's Bells.
But
Brian, you want to chime in?
He would run out onto the mound and just.
Oh, I love those. Wild Thing and Major League, like that was like something all together on it. Brian, any thoughts if we go regular music that you can think of?
Do you have one, Russ? Because I'm looking up something right this second.
I did Lose Yourself. Probably We Will Rock You by Queen is another one. One of the best sports movie montage moments that really, again, brings me back. Every time I hear it, the memories of the first time that I saw something or experienced something, and that is the Mighty Ducks 2 movie. And when they start playing We Will Rock You in that game after they change their jerseys, that takes me back. That gets me every time. Every time I hear the song, I get transported back. So thinking on that and memories and kind of putting me in a headspace, that one's another one I could think of for sure that I definitely would say that. Okay,
I've got my song.
Yes. Okay.
High Road by Fort Minor.
Oh yeah, good old Fort Minor. Good old Fort Minor. What about
that even when things are not going your way, you're going to take the high road.
Ooh, okay. So we're getting some word meanings behind it.
Yeah. Plus, it's just
okay. Okay. Brian, did you find it? Did you find what you were looking for?
And I
was going to say I still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Okay. And there we go. We can't be singing more songs. We're gonna have an issue. What is it?
I think the thing that I would pick right now as a montage song would be a song called Rome by Rat-a-tat. And what I'm looking for is this YouTube comment that I came across.
Okay.
Which was about how this song progresses. Yeah. In fact, it's the top comment here. Whenever I feel sad, this is a comment from Jonas Stein, it looks like. Anyway, a YouTube comment. Whenever I feel sad and lonely, I imagine myself as the lead guitar of this song. At first, playing all alone by myself. Then the bass, perhaps my best friend, perhaps a kind stranger steps in and supports my melody. Next, more friends join in with the drums, helping me keep rhythm. Slowly, more and more people who love me start playing along, and I finally notice them at this time code 2 minutes. Like a heavy weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and now I know wherever I am, whatever I do, people care and encourage me not to play the song, a song, but the song, for it to be the song of my life. Which I was like, wow, this is amazing. And not only that, I think it captures how that song progresses and builds over time. So anyway, that would be the song I would pick, Rome by Rat-a-tat.
Nice.
I just thought of another one for the life because of just the ups and downs of the song, and I love it. In the Air Tonight by Journey and Phil Collins. Nice. When that drum beat
Classic
hits,
Phil Collins.
the yes, all day. My soundtrack would include those on it. Those three songs. If I made a soundtrack of my life, those three songs would appear somewhere on there. In regards to the intersection of faith and music, as we kind of wrap up and kind of go our ways for the night, do either of you have any other comments or any other things that you really want to tie that to, or anything that you guys, remember or kind of want to connect to those two things here to kind of finish us out?
I think I would just finish by saying how in awe I am at the power of music. That the vibrations from, and often in our context, it's vibrations being created by headphones or speakers, or the vibrations from a drum, that those vibrations can vibrate us to the point of moving us to tears or moving us to joy and laughter, and what incredible power that is. And it's just air wiggling. And how cool is that we live in a world where the simple concept of air wiggling can completely drastically change our every perspective.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I want to touch on here is, like, even the Bible talks about how powerful music can be, and that, like, it tries to give us a window into, like, what worship feels like in heaven. And the way it describes it makes it feel like, man, even the powerful music experiences that some of us have had, those awe-inspiring moments where you get chills down your spine and you're just, like, really moved, it's like, man, that just gives us a tiny glimpse into what that's like.
Yeah, I, to kind of close out and then piggyback off what Dave said, I think that's true. Music has that remarkable ability to just evoke feelings of awe, wonder, a sense of connection to something greater than ourselves, which some might attribute, obviously to our Creator, to God, but we've been given this amazing tool that allows us to, like I said, evoke that emotion, evoke memory, evoke certain feelings that we have during that moment. And it's so amazing when you kind of just sit back and really think about it, because I think a lot of the time we miss and forget or don't really notice. Like, I think the best soundtracks are the ones that they give you that feeling, but you almost don't notice they're there. Like, they're just a part of the game, they're part of the gameplay, they're part of what's happening. But also, like, if you just heard that music elsewhere, you get that connection and are immediately transported back to that moment. So I think the fact that we have the ability to have such a wonderful and beautiful thing in music is a very wonderful device and wonderful creation that we have available to us, and makes me very thankful that we have such creative and wonderful abilities as human beings that we were given by our Creator, who, obviously the ultimate creation and ability to be creative in that. And so, I really think that's a good thing that we get to have. So I definitely appreciate that. But that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another podcast episode. Of course, make sure you check out Crossfire News next week on our YouTube channel or any of the social media platforms that you look at out there. And of course, hit the subscribe and like button if you're on YouTube, and make sure you follow our podcast on all of your podcast listening apps, devices, and anything else that you use and listen to us on. We appreciate you guys so much. And again, make sure you head over to our website, crossfirepodcast.com, where you can find out more ways of interacting with us, joining our Discord, seeing all those social media sites. And that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Dave and Brian, as always, for joining me. I am your other host, Russ, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Just remember, you belong, you matter, you were loved. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
And now I'm going to hit our outro music. Enjoy.